Oh, wow. We're starting again.
Hey, good to have a bit of practice.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear us now? I believe there was something going on in the background, so we had a bit of a practice intro there. Let us know, chat, if you can hear us okay. Let's fade in and great practice, Ben. Let's do that again.
Let's do it one more time with feeling this time.
We're feeling it. That's right. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. So, um, thanks, chat, for letting us know. I'm Flynn, and I'm here with Ben Marriott. I'm obviously trying to do too many things at once. Shout out to everyone in chat. Thanks for letting us know that it wasn't working. Thanks, Natalia. Thanks, Festus. John, yes, fantastic, great. Jonathan, thank you, guys. D Flynn, awesome surname. Let's be friends. Got to recycle my joke from before. Did you see that? I'm here with the amazing Ben Marriott. Hello, Ben. How are you?
Thank you very much, Glenn. I'm doing well. How are you? How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very well, very well. So why don't we start with checking out the schedule of what we're doing this week. So this is our week on Adobe Live. So great to have you with us. So we're kicking off right now. So it's Tuesday, 8:30 a.m. in Sydney. A little bit later than that. And we're working on Honor Heroes animation with Ben Marriott, which we will explain in a moment. And then on Wednesday, so tomorrow, we're with the amazing Dale Bagini, so art by Dale, and we're going to get stuck into some vector illustration in Illustrator, of course. Then on Thursday at 9 o'clock, we're going to be doing some creative photography editing with the amazing Demis Rusley. And then on Friday, we are also doing some Honor Hero illustration with Jeremy Lord, which again, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. So, quicker version of what we just did. Thank you so much for coming back. So in this case, today, we've sort of come up with a brief together, haven't we? So I'm just going to fade into this Honor Heroes campaign, and maybe we can have a bit of a chat about it. So I don't know if you've seen this chat, but this is a campaign that came up, I think, middle of last week, called Honor Heroes. And if you're looking for the hashtag and you're outside of America, it's HONOR Heroes. So make sure you do that, because I made that mistake the other day. This is an amazing illustration by Shepard Ferry, the amazing Obey Giant. And it's a campaign around honoring the heroes. Those in the medical profession, and all sorts of people that are keeping us kind of running and keeping society running at the moment while we're in ISO. And so it's a fantastic campaign. There's been a lot of artists and illustrators and designers tackling this campaign over the last, over the weekend and over the last couple of days last week. And we thought, what a great brief for us. What a great brief for Ben Marriott. And so there's some great examples down here that have just popped up. So these are brand new to us. Brand new to me. I hadn't seen them yet. So I think that was, Draplin's had one in his style. So Ben, maybe I might hand it over to you. We were chatting about this, and would this be a great brief to kind of tackle on Adobe Live?
Absolutely. The more I go through my career, the more I love a brief, especially now these days where a lot of my things are mainly focused on me having free reign to do what I want. Having a brief is so nice to keep keep you constrained and having limitations. Otherwise, there's endless possibilities and therefore endless pressure. But I almost miss the days of uni briefs now. So I've chosen to interpret this. My hero that I'm honoring is a delivery driver. Actually, let's pop over to our Photoshop window. So we've got a delivery driver that have become, unsung, unexpected heroes. I think in these times, because they've certainly, for me, they've become this gateway to all my essential items and things like that. I think previously they maybe had a bad rap of the stereotype of just throwing your parcels against the door and running away. But now, like, all my interactions over the past few weeks have been so good with delivery drivers, and it's been really excellent to see, there's just this nice little bit of respect. Everyone understands, they give their distance, and they, put the package down, and then, you don't even need to sign now with most services. And it's been, just a highlight of my day thinking, yes, finally, we've got groceries. We can cook again. And so I also wanted to highlight in the design sort of how a bit of the anonymity that, you don't really, I don't really, know I have too many personal relationships with these with my delivery drivers, but they so they get no personal glory, but they are, they do do an essential service. So I've chucked the face mask and put the face on the face mask as well. And then we've got groceries here that he's delivering, and all of them have face masks as well. And we've got all our essentials. We've got wine, toilet paper, we've got some fruit here, some milk, and of course some bread.
Nice.
And excellent. So I might talk through. So I'm going to be animating this today. I've got it all designed. So we're going to, in a little bit, jump into After Effects and get straight into animating. But I thought first I might talk through the design process, because I happen to have all of my sketches all saved. So I started this. I think you gave me this brief last Friday. So I spent maybe an hour sketching up ideas over the weekend, and then designed this all yesterday morning. So
I know, great to work with, giving you a brief on a Friday evening for a Tuesday morning start. Just delightful.
Always up for a challenge. And so that's kind of, knowing the time restraints obviously should influence what you make as well. I knew that, I only had, a few days to prep this, and that I would have to animate it in 90 minutes or so. So I had to consider those constraints. And my first ideas, I knew that, with that constraint, you kind of have to jump to ideas pretty quickly. Normally you want to, I think it's best to, explore as many ideas as possible and choose the best one. So here I thought, well, I'm going to pick a delivery driver, because that's who I've had most interactions with. I don't know too many personally that have been affected medically by this, fortunately, or had any interactions with the medical staff. So the delivery driver is, that's one that I can definitely put myself into and have a personal take on. So I started off with a few ideas of maybe a hand with a smiley face delivering some goods, or maybe delivery driver standing way back and giving the thumbs up, and the thumbs up had a smiley face. So these are just really nails that I did in Photoshop, and I like to go in and just make a big canvas and just draw little squares as they go. And then kind of here is where I landed on the idea that we went with. Here I've got more of a sort of realistic character shape, and then I've sort of shaded them out. So only the mask is visible, and the groceries, and then just sort of played with composition when I figured, all right, I'm probably going to do something like this. That's a pretty good idea that'll work. So here I've got a few little notes. I've got a little arrow coming out here. This is the groceries pop out. And then here, just playing with the composition of how I'm going to set up the head and the body shape. And then once I've filled up this page, which is when I get to the bottom, I just start a new layer. And here I've got slightly more refined sketches playing with composition. Here, maybe I tried him having the box leaning over, but then that would be more difficult to animate and design, and giving the time constraints, probably wasn't going to, be feasible. And here I've got a few more designs. Here I've shrunken the head a fair bit, because here the head and the box were too similar of a size. And I think it's really important to have hierarchy in your design. And especially, this is going to be like an animation. So there needs to be, I think when you're animating, there should be a point to it being animated. If it can be just told with a still, it may as well be a still. But I thought when we've got animation, we can show him, at the door, and then we've got, and have two little moments. So we have one moment where he's at the door and you see the face mask and you think, oh, that's cute, little face on the mask. And then they open up the delivery box and all the groceries, and they've all got masks as well. So it's a little delight and surprise moment in animation, which I think animation should be about, and where animation is strongest.
Nice.
So with all these designs, I'm designing it without the groceries in here, because the opening scene, it needs to focus on the head, because that's where we want our eyes to look. So I thought I'd do that, draw the attention to the head by making it maybe one of the only rounded objects in the scene, having it pretty close to the center, and having the most contrast and detail in there as well. And also here's where I started exploring hand shapes for grabbing the box, because hands are very, very difficult to draw, and I really struggle with them. So trying to figure out a way to get the hands looking realistic without, compromising on a simplistic design.
Are hands as difficult to animate as they are to draw? Does it hold true throughout?
Even more difficult to animate. Like I avoid animating hands at all costs. Here it's great that they're stuck to the box. They don't need to. They don't really need to move. They're gripping. But yeah, like a hand, like why they're difficult to draw is, you know, you got five things that can move independently and have three joints in almost all of them, and that it's an object that we see two of them in front of our face all day, every day. So we're very used to looking, you know, we know what they look like. So if they look wrong, it's really obvious. Same with drawing a face. Like it just takes the smallest like distance between the eyes to be slightly off before something looks completely, you know, weird and out there. So from here, I sort of just blew up one of these thumbnails. I sort of duplicated it, put it up to the full screen of our Photoshop composition, and then just sort of sketched over it lightly, trying to fill in, just doing it slightly, getting a slightly tighter design here. So, you know, drawing the head where I want, you know, where I want the face to be. I've started roughing in the grocery items I want. Here in this earlier version, I've got like a banana and an apple. And here I thought I'd do one more pass of this because I wasn't quite happy with how sort of lopsided the hands are and the box is kind of sloping. So I just did one more refined sketch over that. And this is normally how I work, just start really rough and really small. And then once I'm happy with how it looks at a small scale, bring it up and add all the detail. And I'm always, you know, zooming in and out to make sure it still works while it's small. Because if it works while it's really small, you know, you've probably got a strong image. Then what we do is we take this into Illustrator. So I just saved out these two top layers as a JPEG, and then went over to Illustrator to draw in our shapes. So normally I put the sketch at the very top layer and just set it to, you know, multiply. Maybe its transparency is a bit lower. I think we're at 20% here. Lock that, and then just start drawing in the shapes behind it. And these are relatively basic shapes here, so it doesn't take too long to draw this. One thing I did want to mention is color palettes. So I've been because I get a lot of questions about where you get your colors from, and lately a service that I've discovered recently is a place called Chroma. So if we go over to web browser, we can see it's designed with the colors you love. Chroma uses an AI to learn which colors you like and creates limited palettes for you to discover. So if you go to generate, it comes up with all of these palettes. Most of them are just two colors. And what I really like is, like, I find colors so hard, especially trying to find colors that have kind of unique and interesting color matches. Like I really like this one here. I would never have thought to create like a muted teal with this sort of beigey sort of golden color. Those are things I wouldn't come up with. And even better than this, the webpage, the app for Chroma, is I've got an Instagram page which has like a curated selection of all these color palettes. And these are great because these all have 4 colors each. And these were made specifically for artists to take and use the colors. So I think it's also fine to just grab colors off someone else's artwork. I think that's completely fine. I don't think anyone owns a color palette by any means. I wouldn't, you know, if you're going to do that, don't draw the same subject matter as that person's drawing. But, you know, like I'm happy to anyone take the colors from my work if you like them or anything like that. That's completely fine. Most of them I've taken from here. So here it's 100% guilt-free to take colors. So I think I found one, and yeah, they're just really interesting. Like I'm really into these types of color palettes that are a bit more, and there's a bit more friction between the colors. They're a bit more abrasive. It's, you know, like these blue like kind of really stands out, and they're a bit jarring, but somehow work. And I think the one I found was down here, and each one of them has a little carousel as well, so you can, you know, has all the hex colors. But normally I just take a screenshot of this front one and then dump it into Illustrator and then create a palette. Oh, this is actually my second version. So here's how I started. So normally, yeah, I just create a square, and I think I've got 5 of them here. And then I drop these colors, and then I added my own color because this didn't really have a really dark color. So I like to at least have a very dark and a very light color that kind of work as my black and white. And what is really handy as well is to make sure. So let me unlink all of these. So what I do in Illustrator is, yeah, just create a square, duplicate it a bunch of times, and then I drop them just one by one. And let's just do 3 here. on. Also, when I was looking at this, I was really after a pale blue color because I knew I wanted the gloves to have a real sort of like a paleness, but also just a blue hint to them. So that's one way I look at when I'm finding color palettes. I was like, well, there's one color I'm after. Does this color palette have that? And then I normally work with, well, what else is left in the color palette, and I'll figure that out. So when you've got, just some squares that have got different fills, you can go over here to your swatch panel, and you click the new color group down here. It creates a folder, and you can select create from selected artwork and convert process to global. And what global process means is that if you let's change a bunch of these colors. Let's just change the background to this pink color. What global process means is that if I go and edit this color over here in this swatch by double clicking on it and select preview, it will update on my artwork. So here, what I did is I got my green, and I thought this green isn't really quite working for me, or really I thought, could I make this better? Because I felt like the color palette looked very Ned Flanders to me. Like it's the exact colors of his sweater and skin tone.
Can't unsee that. Can't unsee it.
Well, and I don't typically like working with green, especially one that's so like yellow and sort of grassy as this. So I can just double click over here on the swatch over here, select preview. I normally like to go to HSB. That's what I'm more comfortable working in. And then I can just adjust the slider a bit to the right, and it becomes a bit more of a bluer color. Or I could, change it completely. Maybe it's a brown, maybe it's black. And this is just a really good way of like, I just chuck all my colors into the scene, make sure that they work against each other, and then maybe tinker with them a little bit. So I ended up with this version that's just a little more of a blue in that green, but everything else is pretty much the same. And I think I maybe saturated this dark color a little bit more, and then of course separated everything onto its own layer. So each of the groceries are their own layer. And I also expanded this canvas a little bit because I'm going to import this into Photoshop. And anything not on your artboard, when you import it into Photoshop, will get cropped out. And I knew that I wanted to have the arm sort of lift up a bit and reveal a little bit more of the arm as they, move the box around. So I just expanded this canvas by, I think it's 1,200 by 1,200 instead of 1080 by 1080.
Right.
And that would give me a bit more wiggle room when we get into After Effects.
And then there was a question just from Kimmy. Was the initial design created in Photoshop or After Effects for animation? I think it was Photoshop. Is that right?
Yes. So I sketched it out in Photoshop and then drew all the shapes in Illustrator because drawing vector shapes is a lot quicker for me to do in Illustrator. And then I took that into Photoshop. Where's my Photoshop file? Over here. So all of these, folders with the different layers from Illustrator, and then I went in and just added clipping masks to all of them and added shading. So if we let's select our bread. Let's have a deep dive look in the bread. And I didn't label all these layers because, at this point, there's just going to be too many layers to keep track of. As long as the folders are pretty a layer, that's going to be enough as efficient enough for me to organize in. So if we do hit it, I do color code them because otherwise, once you've got all of these open, if I select them all and open them, no, I don't. But if these are all gray, you just end up with hundreds of layers, and it's hard to figure out what things are. So at least I know, well, if the layer's yellow, it's groceries. And I know we do a similar thing in After Effects as well. So let's see our bread, and we've got a few layers here. We've got a main bread layer, and then I've just got a few sort of gradient shadings on there, and I did these just with a soft brush. So the basic brush over here, soft round brush. I push it up to a nice size. I drop somewhere, color from somewhere else on the design, and then just add some shading just by clicking and dragging. I did do this using a Cintiq, but often when I'm doing gradients like this, I don't really need much of a pen action. I can do this with a mouse. Then I had a layer of white, and then another layer of white as well, and just kept adding highlights and shadows until everything kind of looked nice. And I've also designed these all facing straight up. I think in the animation I might want to have these sort of leaning outwards, a bit like I had in sort of this sketch,
right?
Because I think that might create a bit more of an interesting motion. But when I was designing in Illustrator, it's a lot easier to keep your designs vertical, because then if you need to add a square to something, you don't need to re-rotate it or the rotation can get off. So I just try to keep things animated while they're face up. So I know that,
That's a great tip. So you want kind of start with the right angle, start with the vertical, but then you can change it later.
Yeah. So if I had this wine bottle like this, and I think, okay, it needs to have another label here, like a smaller label, I'd have to create a shape like this and kind of rotate it,
eyeball it a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'd never end up exactly. Oh, that one's pretty good.
Pretty good job.
But if we look, it's no, that's not too bad. I mean, there are ways you can do it. In this case, I'd duplicate this layer, and you can adjust these handles that maintain on the same axis. But if there was something else that I needed to do, it's just easier to keep them all straight.
Nice.
And then even in your design later, I know I was doing this, going to start animating this, so that's easy to change in After Effects because I'm going to animate the rotation anyway. But I just, when you're finished, when you're happy with the initial design, then you can go and rotate them in this format. Here, just grab your objects and tweak them around like that. And that just gives it a bit, already I can see there's just a bit more life and, randomness in this scene here.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. Something I wouldn't have thought of to bring this sort of everything in at the right angle and then change it in After Effects. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Anything Excellent. That kind of idiot proofs it for me. You know what I mean? Anything where it's like, okay, now even I can't stuff this up is always.
Exactly. That's so much of my design process is all right, let's get this sorted and figured out here. So then later in the process, I can't I can't mess it up. It's already been decided.
Right. There was a question from chat about is using Illustrator to ensure all the colors and strokes are vector?
Not particularly, because it doesn't really matter that these are vector illustrations. Now we're in After Effects. A lot of times it does if you're animating the shapes. I'm not going to be doing that too much. It's mainly so I can draw it quickly and get a look of flat colors. And Illustrator is just the best way to do that. Even though I'm adding gradients later, to get this look, it would be possible to do in Photoshop, but it might take a lot of time. And this is a little bit more different for me. I normally don't do things as geometric as this, but I like to mix things up a little bit. It's still very much within my wheelhouse of gradients and textures. But yeah, that's why I use Illustrator. I'm not going to be them being vectors won't matter so much here.
Nice. And Chris had asked, how do you plan your animations? Is it thumbnailing or storyboarding, and what are you thinking about? At the very beginning, actually, it was kind of a bit of a mix between both, wasn't it? It was kind of several thumbnails to get to.
Yeah, the beginning I was thumbnailing the design here. Like in this animation, it's really simple. If you were to storyboard it, it would be two boards. It would be, essentially, and this is kind of how I'd run it. It would be this guy with the empty box. And then with the groceries in there. That's why I kind of separated the fruit and the groceries on a separate layer, so I could easily delete and go in and change them. But so I could say this is how the animation is going to start, and here's how it's going to end. But definitely for a longer animation that's going to be longer than a few seconds, storyboarding is essential. Spending time thumbnailing and storyboarding will save you so much time later on, and is really production friendly. So you can show your work to a client or internally to communicate here's what it's going to look like, and you can address any issues where it's going to be a lot less difficult to change, because if you design everything and then show the client and they're like, oh, that scene doesn't work for us, then you've wasted all that time designing that scene. Where if you can show, hey, here's a storyboard with the VO, let us know what you think, and they can a lot of clients you might need to show them more developed things. That, some clients don't get that, like, it's not going to look like this, is it? This is all sketchy. And then you've got no, like it will become something later on. This is just for you to check, whether the voiceover lines up with what's happening on screen, works for works for you.
Nice.
So yeah, always storyboard and thumbnail. So I think it's about time we get animating. So you can see we're in After Effects now, and we've got a bit more room to work with outside of the composition, because I've actually made this a little bit bigger. I think it used to be 250 by 250. So we can see all these extra arms and hands down here, but I want it to be, essentially 1080 times 2. I've already forgotten what that previous number is, 160. That's going to be 2160. So we have just that little bit of wiggle room at the bottom here. So we can move. Let's grab our hands and box layers. So we can, oops, woohoo, need the arms as well. So we can move these up and still have some, stuff underneath. So one thing I'm going to do, so this is a larger composition window that maybe I'm normally working in. Normally 1080 is as wide as you get. So I'm going to just drop the resolution down to half, because that won't make any difference to us because we're already, we're zoomed in by 50%, and that's just going to make rendering a little bit faster. So all of these layers are pretty much how I had them set up in Photoshop. When you import a PSD into After Effects, it comes in with all of your folders as separate comps, which is how we want it. And then I've just color coded these here. I haven't done much more than that. And timeline is 10 seconds long. I'm going to bring that work area to start at 1 second. That's so because I want this to loop. Let's drag this into maybe 6 seconds as well. I'm not sure how long this is going to be yet, but having a little, sort of extra room to play with on the left and right means that we can add keyframes outside of here, which are going to help when we loop some aspects that I'm sure we'll get into when that happens. So first thing I need to do is parent everything. So I'm going to select all my groceries, which are these yellow objects. I'm going to grab the pick whip and parent them to the box. And that just means when I move the box, the groceries move with them too. So I'm also going to parent the fingers and the hands to that box. So now the fingers and the hands move with the box, and also the arms as well. So all of these items are attached to the box. And then I'm also going to parent the box to the body and the head to the body as well. So if I want to move the body, everything moves with the body. And if I want to move the box, the hands and the groceries all move with the box. And those are going to be the two main things that I'm going to be animating. So first, I want to start sort of blocking in the main movement. So I want the big motion here is going to be, it's going to start with the box empty and then, or, closed. And then he's going to sort of reveal it with a little position animation. He's going to sort of move his hands up, and then all the groceries are going to spill out the top. So I'm going to get all my grocery layers and just move them to the back half of the animation. So the first half is going to look like this, and then groceries are going to pop out. And then pop back in, and we're going to loop again. So that's pretty much the overall pace of what's going on here. So now, the biggest movement that is going to affect this is the movement of the box. That's the thing that's going to be moving the most, so I'm going to animate that first. So I'm going to start by keyframing its position here, and I'm going to keyframe it just before this motion. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click and separate dimensions. That is so I'm not really going to animate the x-axis of this box at all. It's not going to move to the side. It's only going to move up and down. And this just means it's going to be easier to work with in the graph editor. So let's go a bit ahead, and I'm just going to nudge this up a little bit, and then I'm going to copy that first keyframe and paste it back down on the y-axis. So he just does a little, moves it up and down.
A little jiggle.
Now these are, a little jiggle. So if I had keyframes on the x-axis as well, even though the x-axis isn't doing anything, and then I select these and go into the graph editor, which is where I'm going to edit everything. Well, let's go back and easy ease those with F9. So then it's just a little bit smoother, and we can see our graph in our graph editor. So here are we in the speed graph? Let's go to the value graph. We can see our y position is starting here, moving up, which looks like it's inverted in the graph editor. So the curve goes down and then goes back up. But we've got all this y-axis here as well, and that's just going to get in the way. So I'm going to select the y-axis, unclick the stopwatch, and then that all goes away. So we're just dealing with the y-axis here. And it's 3 seconds in. I'm going to create a little marker here just by pressing asterisk on my keyboard so that I know, when I go into the graph editor, I can see the moment that our groceries appear. Let's drag this graph editor up a bit. So now, and zoom in. So a lot of this animation is going to be done here in the graph editor. So we're going to start with our box at this height. It's going to move up and then down. But I want to have a bit of anticipation before it moves up. So it's going to start level, and then here I'm just going to add a new keyframe move that up here in our graph section, in our graph editor. Let's move this one to the left, this one here, and then at the end there should be a little overshoot as well. So maybe I can just grab and copy and paste this keyframe. Our anchor, our Bezier handles are all in the wrong direction, so let's tweak those and just spread these out a bit. So now in the graph editor, I can see this is roughly the motion that we want. I can tell here our box is going to get lower, lift up, and then as it comes back down, our groceries are going to appear. Now, this doesn't look too bad at the moment. I do want this to be a bit more severe. So I'm going to grab this keyframe here and drag this down. So all the points, all these anchor points here, or Bezier points in the graph editor are your keyframes. And this graph indicates sort of the value of that position. So here we're at 290 roughly position. Then we slowly go up to 1,300, and then we do a steep movement up, which goes to 1,220. And this is just a little easier for me to see. On here, I like having this. We want to ease into this anticipation, and that's when the box is moving a little bit below, and then it's lowering before it sort of lifts up.
Right.
And then having an anticipation, it really helps people expect a movement in a sense.
Right.
So like if you think before a character jumps, if you want to have a character jumping in an animation, you wouldn't have them standing and then in the next frame them just zooming off into the sky. Before you jump, you crouch down to build up energy,
right,
and then you release upwards. So that's a similar thing here. So our character here is moving the box down, then up, and then sort of really smashing it back down to reveal these groceries. I want the groceries to appear at its sort of fastest state. So I'm going to move these keyframes over here and maybe push this down a bit further. So you lift it up a bit more. It's a bit more of a faster motion. And maybe now in the graph editor, you can easily spend hours and hours just tweaking these curves to make it look supernatural, to look very natural, not supernatural. That means something else. To looking as natural as possible. And actually, maybe it was a mistake to drag these back over. So let's push these back here because it doesn't need to have. Yeah. And maybe we want the box to lower a bit as well, a bit more when it comes down the second time. How does that look? Maybe that's a bit too much. That's not too bad. Here, so we can we want the groceries to pop on at a moment where there's a lot of impact, where there's a lot of motion happening, like the thrust of him pushing the box down is sort of releasing them. So we're going up, down, and then after they go down, it's going to slowly ease into the resting position.
So you, when you're thinking about this animation, are you, because you're describing what you're doing at the moment, are you also kind of still thinking about how this works? Like, are you realizing how the animation should work as you're doing it, or do you already know exactly how it's going to work? Like, are you learning as you're going?
I'm learning a bit as well. So I know roughly idea. I know the box needs to go down a bit, then up more, and then down a bit, and then rest. But I have a rough idea of how the speed will work in my head, but I wouldn't be able to just grab a paper and draw how these curves should look.
Right.
Because it's always, feeling, you have to kind of feel it in the motion, feel it in the moment. That sounds very, woo-woo. But yeah, seeing it is different. Like I might think, oh, well, it's going to look better with this, with these keyframes close together, but maybe it doesn't.
Right.
So, and yeah, it's just there's a little bit of trial and error in here. So I think a steeper animation might work well. See, when I move this one here, there's a bit more anticipation. As I lift it up, it goes, but then so it's a little heavier as it you feel the weight a bit more as it slams these groceries down. So it goes, whoosh, and it kind of snaps up. I think I don't want it to be too snappy because I want it to be a a moment of like, relief, and it to be like a nice sort of happy sort of choir sort of jangling, like, as these, that was a terrible pitch. There you go. You get my singing on the live stream.
We got to save that sample for something. We got to use it.
Yeah,
Put
the
that on
soundboard. Yeah, whenever something hits, animation hits just right. So I'm reasonably happy with this animation here. And also in the graph editor, one thing you can do is just select this graph shape, and you can like use the transform tools to edit this like you would a rectangle to sort of increase the severity. So if we just want to try it a little bit more, we can do that. That's not too bad. And really, like, you might have to replay this 1 second over 50 or so times. Okay, maybe that was too much. Let's undo that. And this is all personal taste and depends on what the style of their animation is and all of that. So let's see. And I'm spending a lot of time on this. It might seem like a lot of time, but that's no time to spend on a movement. What we've got 5 keyframes here. You could easily spend 2 hours getting those right. And with an animation like this, that's going to tell the main story of the animation. So you want to spend the time getting that right. Me animating, some sort of this gradient in the background. People aren't looking at that as much, so that's something I'm not going to spend as much time on. You really want to figure out like the economy of your animation, like where it's going to make the biggest impact for me to spend the time. Like I'm going to add a bit of animation to the head and to the groceries as well. But if I didn't have time at all to do that, if I could only animate one thing, it would be this box. Because already, this essentially tells the story of what we need to say here. So I'm going to go and copy these keyframes. Okay, Control-C and Control-V, because I want our groceries to disappear at the end in a similar motion. So he's going to lift up, reveal them, and then do another motion, and then on this keyframe, they're going to disappear. So I'm going to press Alt and right square bracket to trim all of these layers to that moment. So now, let's just play that from the beginning. They're going to pop up and then disappear. Now that works pretty good. So now our animation loops. Actually, you probably don't need all this extended area for our looping animation. So I'm just going to bring in our work area to make it a little tighter. I want to make sure we get the end of this keyframe in here. And the closest we could have this loop is starting at this keyframe and ending at this keyframe. Because if we were to start here, when it would loop, our position would be mid motion. You don't notice it too bad here, but there's just a little jump when we reach the end of this work area. So let's try and see how it looks. Enclosing all the keyframes. All right, I'm pretty happy with this. Actually, we will need to extend these a little bit because I'm going to animate the body now. So let's grab our body, and I'm essentially going to do pretty much the same movement with the body. So I'm going to get its position up, separate dimensions, keyframe the Y position, and I'm going to add keyframes in all of these same areas, like the same timing as this, this set of 5 keyframes, which we're doing that movement in, and I'm going to try to match them. So this one doesn't quite align. Let's nudge that over. So I'm going to add a bit of movement in the body as well. So it's not just the arms that are moving. The body is going to do a little bit of a bit of a wave motion. The body's going to move first, like he's moving with his shoulders, and then the arms are going to follow through with that action. So it's pretty much doing the same movement. We have so for our box, we start at the resting position, get low, get up, get even lower, and then back to the resting position. So with our body, I'm just going to nudge with our arrow tools. It's going to get a bit lower, get way up, and I'm limited by how far I can go up by how much body I have underneath, but I should have more than enough because I want this movement to be a lot subtler than the hand movement. And then this keyframe is going to go down, and then we've already got our resting position. So I'm going to ease those with F9, so we have some curves, and then go into our graph editor, and we can see this is a similar looking graph to Y position of our box. What we can notice though is that these upward motions, or these downward motions actually here, the upward spikes in our graph editor are much higher. So let's drag these down, and then let's just see how this looks. Right, so now we can see we've got our body moving and the hand moving as well. So that adds a whole bunch of extra life to it, and this isn't too bad. It's not subtle enough. It's too big of a motion. But so I think we can be really subtle with this, because you wouldn't deliver goods with so much of a shoulder movement.
Look, it's kind of like you're tripping up the final step.
It does look like that. But that's not looking too bad. I might just go and match these curves a little bit. And awesome, there's a really awesome plugin which I use a lot. I think it's my most used plugin, and it's free. So I'm going to open that up quickly. It's called Ease Copy, and let's move that down over here. That doesn't mess up our stream setup, does it? Let me move this window back out.
I think we can see that fine. The Ease Copy, we can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, ease copy. So what that does is you can copy and paste easing. So I've got the ease of these 5 layers. So I want my curves to look exactly. I want these curves of this body, of the body position, to look exactly like the curves of the box, because these are really smooth. I spent a lot of time tweaking these, and I just want that same speed. And it's going to take a lot of work for me to kind of figure out and match these properly in here. But what I can do is select all the keyframes in the over here, and as long as they're the same number, like we have 5 keyframes here, with the ease we go to copy. Let's select them down here, and let's go jump into a graph editor, and then we're going to click. Select them again, and then we're going to click paste, ease, and then whoa, and now it's copied them, it's pasted them, and you see the one on the right is that looks great. The one on the left here doesn't. Right. That's because if we look here, this handle is pointing really a lot, quite vertically up, and when it translates that here, because that position, it's not moving, because the movement's a lot subtler, it's putting a more drastic movement on here. But we can just adjust that slightly, and there we've got and now we can see the speed at which the motion happens is identical between the body and the box. So one thing I do want to do is offset these keyframes. So like I said, I want the shoulders to move first and then the hands. So I'm just going to drag these keyframes, like a selection on our body, and just drag these to the left. Let's try it with 2 keyframes and just see how that looks. So now we can see it's a subtle difference, but the body is going to move first.
Right.
And it's just, there's a slight offset, which, gives a bit more life to the character than this robot just going up and down. Even though, we've got a nice bit of parallax because it's not moving as far. Now there's, it's offset in time as well. And I'm going to do the same thing to the head. So I'm going to keyframe the head's position. I'm going to separate dimensions, keyframe it its Y position. We don't need that X keyframe. That, and I'm just going to paste that keyframe along with the body and do a similar thing. It's going to nudge down, and then up. It doesn't matter if it goes off the head, that is fine with me. And it's going to get down a bit further and then rest. And then I can just click and paste that same easing, and let's see, our head's going to have a little movement as well. Now our head's doing a little bob. That's probably leaving the head a bit too much, because I don't want that to be the focus of the animation. Let's go into our graph editor so I can see these a bit Ooh, that's looking not too. Oh, we've got that same that same issue with this anchor point pasting as well. We're doing that to nudge lower though. Let's see.
Is that very common in your animation work where you have to build around the focal point? Like is there always a focal point? Is that like a rule, or is it most of the time, or what's the ratio there?
There should be. In animation more than illustration, because you've got, with illustration, someone can sit and look at it for as long as they want. Like in illustration, you want to have a hierarchy to draw people's attention to certain information. So if you've got like a band poster, like the band's name is going to want to be pretty prominent. You're not going to put that small in the fine print at the bottom, and it just says 11th of August. You want them to know, hey, cap their attention. Hey, this is about, it's this band. You like this band, you're going to want to buy tickets.
Yeah.
But with animation, but like with an illustration online, there's a bit more time for people to, they can look around it as they wish. But with an animation, if you're not looking at the right spot, you're going to miss key information. So especially with like client projects, with like explainer videos and things like that, I tend to have, this should be, you can only look at one thing at one time. So that's what you want people to be looking at on the screen. So in this animation, I want people to be looking at the head, and then I'm going to draw their attention to the box, and then they're going to be looking at the groceries. So the head here is like, that's the focal point because we've added more detail here, and it's a bit of a different shape. And because it's a face. Faces are inherently, draw our attention more than other things. That's why you see so many headshots in advertising, in movie posters, on YouTube thumbnails. People put a face in there. That's why I put a face in a lot of my illustrations, because it's something we like humans we cling to. I think there's like a real like animalistic thing, like there's a face. I want to see if it's is it going to attack me, is it or is it bringing me groceries? so yeah, having the focal points, important. That's something I didn't do enough when I was at the beginning of my career. I'll just have everything moving all at once, but not like you should have a direction of like, even like plan out in the storyboards, I want the eyes to look here, and then I want the eyes to look at the groceries. So that's what the anticipation does as well. It draws our attention to like, oh wow, this box, I mean, at the moment our head's moving too much, so it's kind of taking up too much attention. But if we're watching this without the head, let's just turn the head off for a second. You're watching this, and then at this moment you think, oh, this box is really moving. Like I'm looking at that. I'm paying more attention to that. And then you see the groceries. So just to draw our eye there.
I wonder if anyone's ever done eye tracking for animation to see what works, or like A/B tested animation, using
that would be great.
Heat maps. That would be cool.
That's also already I'm like, I need to do that YouTube video. I need to do eye tracking. I've seen lots of eye tracking on YouTube videos, none for animation though.
Yeah. So
I don't know what technology is required for me to do that, but I think that would be really fun.
I've got some links we used to use. I can share some stuff with you after the stream.
Really? Oh, please. That would be great.
Yeah, I have to dig them up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you some stuff to start with anyway. I'm sure you'll discover things that I've never heard of in my entire life, but I'll start you off.
Okay, so we've got our head moving now. That's a... No, carry on.
You go on. No, you go on.
Okay, well, we've got our head moving now. That's at a more relaxed pace than I think. Now, at the moment, do I want the head to lead the animation? So I can move, by leading the animation is like we did with our shoulders. So here, our shoulders are sort of leading the animation in a sense, like they're moving first. So if we put our head keyframes ahead of that, we can see our head is doing, this motion first. So our head moves first, and then our shoulders, then our hands. That wouldn't really work in reality, like our heads, we wouldn't, deliver something like that. Normally, your head, your limbs and your head normally follow the body, because that's going to be the biggest movement. So it's kind of like your hair. Like you move your head, and then your hair sort of follows afterwards, and it lays back. Same if you move your body. If you move your body, your head is going to be slightly delayed. So I want to move the head a bit back. Maybe I don't really want it to be where our box is, because I kind of want the keyframes to be offset, so there's just a bit more depth to the movement. But let's see how that looks. That's not too bad. Let's see if I can push it even further behind the groceries. That's not too bad. Maybe I can, at this point, It doesn't look great when it's behind the groceries. I think maybe they're in between. It's only one frame, but I think it's okay.
And just letting you and chat know, if you have any questions, where our time is getting down, like in a minute or two, we'll take a little bit of a break for some Q&A. So get your questions in now if you would like them answered.
Awesome, please. And here, I still think maybe the head's moving a bit too much. So go into the graph editor, and where is it moving too much? It's this movement here where it pops up. So let's just move that closer to our resting line. There we go. That's much better. So it's really subtle. Let's even move these ones down a bit as well. There. I think that's good. And now we don't have any of the head or shoulder movement at the back end of our animation. I'm going to copy and paste these keyframes, and it looks like we've got our shoulder, then our head, then our box moving. So let's line those up. So we've got our box, head move, move our head keyframes in front of that, and then move our shoulder keyframes. So now they should just do the same movement to put the groceries back away. So, we've only animated 3 things, and we've already got a lot of motion in our character here.
Nice.
So let's save that, and I think now might be a good time to go into questions.
Perfect. That was amazing timing. Well done. So thanks everyone. There's a couple of questions here, but feel free to get them in. We'll tackle a couple while we're here. So Festus, Steve was asking, given more time, could you animate each of the items in the box to bobble up and down a bit as they came in as into After Effects in layers?
Well, Festus, you're in luck because we do have a bit more time. We've got a whole other hour of this stream, and that's what we're going to be doing in the second half. But yes, absolutely. I didn't do that first because, that is going to, like we did with our box movement first, we want our groceries are going to react to the box coming in. So how we've animated the box is that's limited our decisions for how we're going to animate the groceries. But yes, all the groceries, they're all going to pop in and jostle and rotate as well.
Fantastic. Israel was asking, how do you export an animation out of After Effects? And we might have time to show this one. Does that? I suppose it depends on the platform or the output.
Kind of. Normally, like I think the textbook workflow would be to add your composition to the render queue, export it out, something that like as a high resolution file as you can, like the default lossless animation one is good for that. Your file's going to be huge though. It's going to be absolutely huge, but you'll have a as high quality as it's ever going to be. And then you would import that file into Adobe Media Encoder. And you would encode that into all the different formats that the client needs, or that where it's delivering it to. So you just chuck that one file in and say, hey, we need a H.264 MP4 for this. We need a ProRes version, and we need some other version that needs to go on TV or something like that. And then you can, because you've got that high res render that's all approved and good, you don't need to render it. Like, it's much quicker to encode into all the different formats. What I do, and what in a lot of the big studios that use, the typical workflow is you just go up to composition, add to media encoder, and media encoder will render slightly slower than your render queue, but not by much, and it has the added benefit of you can render while you're still working in After Effects as well if you need that. And then essentially I just use the default setting in media encoder, and it does take a little while for this to pop up here, but the default setting is just a H.264 MP4. That's most clients don't even need a ProRes version because they're just going to upload it to the web anyway, onto Facebook and to YouTube,
right?
Which prefer H.264 MP4. I think my default preset is set to the YouTube 1080p one, which is fine. I also have a plugin called After Codecs, which means that I can export H.264 out of After Effects. So what I do, I think that plugin's like $80, but it's really useful. I mainly got it because at the time you couldn't export QuickTime files out of a PC because it was a Mac codec. So now I just press Control M, which adds my wrong button. Control M, which adds it to competition to our render queue, and I've got templates that set up. So H.264 at 70% quality, and then render that out, and that renders a really small file size. But H.264 MP4 you're gonna get the best ratio of quality to file size. If you need a high quality, I render as a ProRes 4422 or ProRes 4444 that has an alpha channel if you need it to have a transparent background. But yeah, add it to render queue, the default's fine. I don't do anything special. Sometimes the compression eats it up on Instagram, sometimes it doesn't. Who knows? But yeah, the default's fine. I don't do anything fancy.
Cool. You mentioned a plugin then, but Amanda was asking, what plugins do you use to help make animation easier? So maybe one or two that you use.
Yeah. Ease Copy is a great one. That's free. So definitely get that. I use that all the time. Ease Copy and VFX, is it VX Console? FX Console it is, by Video Copilot. In most of my tutorials, I tend not to use plugins. I change my workspace so it is the default workspace, so people can see that hey, you don't need plugins for any of this. This is just extra. Right. If you find yourself wanting a lot more freedom, because especially for beginners, I think I got caught up in just thinking plugins would solve my problem, so I'd get heaps of them, and then it just clouded everything, and I wasn't thinking about the foundation. I was thinking about a quick solution to make things easier. But Ease Copy is great. These are great plugins. Everyone should get these, even if you're a beginner, because it just helps. It's a utility. You can just copying and pasting. Easing is really useful. FX Console as well. That's by Video Copilot, and what it does, that's free as well. It's assigned to a shortcut on your keyboard. I think it's Control Spacebar, and it pops up this menu here. And let's with that box selected, and it just brings up this type bar, so I can just type in effect. So say if I want to add curves, I can just type in C, curves comes up, press enter, and adds the curves effect. It's essentially like a search bar for your effects, but right. It pops up wherever your cursor is. And I have my most used effects on here as well. So I've got a fill effect at number 1, so I can just press 1 on my keyboard, it adds a fill effect. And I could press 3, it adds tint.
Right.
That's really useful. It's also great for taking screenshots, because it's kind of more difficult than it kind of should be to get a screenshot out of After Effects. Normally you kind of have to save it, render a PNG or export your frame as a PSD. But for this, what you do is I'm going to put that resolution back to full, get a frame rate what you want, open this up here, and if we click this export button, we can select copy to clipboard, save to PNG, save to JPEG. I normally copy to clipboard and then go into Photoshop, and we can just paste it. And then we've got our image right there. So that's really useful. I do that all the time for making thumbnails and YouTube videos and things like that. So FX Console, really great. They're the top 2 free plugins that I use. Also use Overlord. Overlord's great. Flow, it's great for easing as well. Overlord's good for you can copy and paste vector files from Illustrator into After Effects, which is very handy. Those are the main ones that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Hope that helps.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then there was another question, which I think is really interesting for the time. So do you have any resources or maybe advice, if not, for finding more freelance and animation work, especially in these difficult times?
Well, I'm not doing as much freelance work lately because I'm more focused on, YouTube and the more product side of things and education. But so I haven't really had to find work during a downtime like this. And I think now's different is because, there is dry periods where, there's less work in an industry. I think normally over Christmas and over winter is what I hear from other freelancers.
Right. I think that's across the board. I think particularly in Australia, businesses seem to just shut down in December and start coming back in around mid-January. So you really have to plan for that time.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's something you don't expect for, I think when I was freelancing, I planned holidays. So I was okay, I knew that I wouldn't be working during that time, but it can be, if you think, I normally get, this much money a month. And then oh no, there's 2 months where I'm not making any of that,
Right.
That can throw you whole plan's out of whack. But so I suppose at the moment, like everyone's going through this more severely because I hear from lots of people that work's drying up because people have less budget to spend on freelancers. I'd suggest like maybe reaching out to try focusing more on companies that might not know many freelancers, like trying to find like more obscure people, like obscure employers. So like because the agencies that if they do motion design all the time, they know freelancers. They're probably going to call on their if they have freelance work, they're going to go to their favorites. But so you want to find someone that doesn't have favorites, someone that doesn't really know much about motion design. So I think in one of our previous streams, like a good technique to do is to go onto job boards. Like we've got the Loop in Australia, but like Seek or anywhere that's has job boards, and then search for set up your notifications to receive jobs for graphic designers, not necessarily motion designers, because if a company is hiring a graphic designer, it's almost certain that at some point in the future, they're going to want to have their graphics animated. Like most graphics, tend to get animated at some point, and they might not know that. They might not have someone on call. They might be a big agency hiring a graphic designer, but it might be, a mom and pop shop in America somewhere. But if you can see that company, and then send them your reel, you can, a few other people are going to be sending them that. Even though they're not asking for a motion designer, then they're probably not going to give you work straight away, but you might be at the top of their list or the near top of their list when they do. So when they think, we do need to animate some stuff. There was a guy that reached out to us a few months ago. Maybe he can help us. And I think you should if you're freelancing, make outgoing sort of emails, searching for work part of your routine. Because I think what we tend to do is we get really busy on a job that's a big job, and that we get paid, it's great, that we don't have time to do any outgoing emails, and then like to search for jobs. And then when that job's over, we have no work, and we don't have any, any sort of leads, that are ready to hire us. So I think if you can, you set 30 minutes every Friday or something like that, or even at the beginning of every month to find out, check the job board, see what companies you hadn't heard of. And that's what that graphic design job board tip is really useful for. Because I did that, I discovered there was thousands of companies in Sydney that I had no idea were doing, design or animation work. Because there's just way more than you realize. There's advertising agencies that are probably doing tens of millions of dollars, but you've never heard of them just because there's so many.
Yeah.
And just make that, if you can make that part of your routine, you're planting the seed. So when when a drought does happen, you've got at least you've got something to lean back on, hopefully, or you've done as much as you can. Times like this, it's really hard because you can do a lot of it. Can be out of your hands. Like we can't control the environment at large.
As it turns out, no, we are not in control.
No, but what you can control is reach out to as many people as you can. So try to do that. That's all you can do, and really try to learn. If you don't have much work, I always try to have a personal project that I'm doing to show, to keep not just to keep my skill sharp, but to have something to show people at the end of it, to maintain top of mind for potential clients. But so I'd say, if you don't have work, try to, do what you can. Say, well, I'm going to do, an hour of work a week, or a day, however much you can spend outgoing to clients. That's all I can control. I can't control anything else than that. So I'm going to spend that hour doing that, and then I'm going to learn a new skill or work on a personal project as well, so that you have, and when we come out the other side, you're going to be leveled up and have, these contacts that didn't have budget before now have budget, and you've got more skills. Hopefully you can be hired easier.
Yeah, some great advice for sure. Might take one more question, then because we've got to give you some time to actually do the rest of the animation. But yeah, Chris was asked, this is a great question that comes up, I think, a lot with motion animation. Ben was asking, what do you suggest if your computer can't handle heavy After Effects and rendering, if you don't at the moment, particularly at the moment, obviously, might not be wanting to throw a lot of money at a new system or anything like that, but they might want to learn.
Yeah. So I think really like one way is get used to viewing your things at a low resolution. Like I've worked a lot of projects where it's like, all right, I'm only going to view this at quarter resolution, and only the final render is when I get to, or when I treat myself to view one frame at a full resolution is how I'm going to see this work. So I think like most of the time, like you don't need a crazy machine to do too much work. Like the work I do, I don't need, my machine's probably way too powerful, not like it's probably overbuilt for what I need it for. I got 64 gigs of RAM. I didn't need 64 gigs of RAM. I'd get by with 32. That was overkill. So like if you can find a machine, find out what you need, your machine to have and invest in those things. So I could have saved $500 by not buying that extra RAM, because RAM was particularly expensive when I bought my machine. Keep your resolutions low. Ideally, you can pre-render things as well. So say if, I did a really complex animation, let's say with this grocery box, and it had lots of effects and all sorts of crazy things were happening in the groceries. But like I was happy with that animation that was kind of, approved, whether internally or externally. So what I might do is render out the composition of the grocery box with all the groceries in there, render that out, and then import that into After Effects and sort of, hide the other composition. So After Effects isn't having to render all those effects. It's just reading a video file as if it's footage. You can also set up proxies in After Effects. I've actually not done that before, but look up After Effects proxies. That's where, if you're working with 4K footage or something that's going to eat up a lot of your intense, sort of CPU usage, it'll render out a low-res version that you can preview while you're animating. Because while you're animating, you don't really need to see you want to see the movement. You don't need to see all of the detail. Right. So, setting things to a low resolution and, and pre-rendering things and using proxies can help. Also in design as well. Like if we, I've worked on, projects where like the render times were an hour and a half, and then with all the effects we were using, and then we realized that's not going to be, we can't have 1.5 hour render times because we've got client whips due every 2 days. We're going to lose, an hour and a half of work because we're going to have to send that, to the client ahead of time. So like, what effects aren't essential? Like if we can take that down to half, we can get more time, and, is it going to really affect the outcome? So we took like a noise layer off and like a slight blur layer off, all these tiny things that, we might, put them on in the final render. You might just want to shy that effect until later. But, if it's something the client isn't going to notice or make and break the project, you can take those effects off. And also like soloing layers as well. Like if you solo a layer in After Effects, which you just click the dot, next to the lock and the audio icon in the timeline, you only see that layer, and you can select as many as you want. So say if I was like through this animation, I didn't really need to see, the masked layer at all. It's fine because it's not, taking up too much RAM. But if that's CPU usage or anything, but if I had a really complicated background, I'd hide that layer because I don't need to see that now.
Right.
Or only make visible the layers I'm working with, and animate those, and then see the rest of the scene. But cool. Those are really those are some practical tips I can show to get the most out of your
absolutely some great tips in there. Not a question, but EA was asking if Kimchi can come and say hello at the end.
Maybe at the end, yeah, for
maybe
sure.
At the end, we'll see if we can do that.
If my wife's watching and can be prepared to, have him by the door, or I can run out and go grab him, we can certainly have a kimchi reveal.
I think we should do that. We'll try to make that happen, ladies and gentlemen. We'll jump back into the animation so we can get to that as well. Thanks for the great questions, everybody. Oh, excellent.
Yeah, thank you. Really good questions. Keep them coming. So we'll have a few more questions at the end. All right. Okay. We're back in After Effects. Let's I'll go back to my tutorial tropes. Here we are. Okay, so now we're going to animate the groceries. That's pretty much the most of what we've got left to do. So groceries, like how we want all of these to pop out, and I think sort of move, kind of have a movement from the center outwards. So let's start with our wine. That's going to be a good one here. So at the moment, our anchor point is right in the middle of our wine layer. That's because in Photoshop, because we had so many nested layers in here, we've got comps within comps making up this wine bottle. The comp is the same size as our main composition window, which puts the anchor point in the middle. So we want to grab our anchor point tool over here on the top left, shortcut for that is Y, and just drag that to the middle of our wine, where sort of the center of gravity would be on our wine, so that when we rotate it, it rotates from the middle and doesn't, rotate from along this axis here. So anchor point in the middle of our wine. And we are going to want to animate its position and rotation. So I'm going to keyframe its rotation and keyframe its position. So let's first try to find its sort of final sort of resting spot. So it's probably going to sit somewhere like this. Maybe nudge that over. So this left line aligns with that corner. Move these a bit further out. And then at the very start, we are going to turn this rotation to 0 and then move its position down into the middle here. And let's go and easy ease these back keyframes with F9 and let's see how this looks. Okay, let's turn the resolution down to half. Okay, we've got some animation happening there. It looks garbage though. So what do we need to do to fix this? We need to, let's probably move this a little further away from the center. And well, really what we need to do is go into the graph editor and make this easing a lot more severe. So one thing I might do is, I do need both positions. I can't separate the position dimensions because it's moving diagonally and that's going to be more difficult. So I might go to the graph editor, go into the speed graph, grab these keyframes and just push this one as far as I can to both of these as far as I can to the left. So its movement's going to be super fast at the beginning and then ease into the motion here. And that's still not looking good. So what I think we need to do is it's moving too much. So what maybe we can do is just try to nudge all of these keyframes to the left. So when it's visible, it's already most of the way through that animation. So that's not too bad. That's looking much better, even though it's just a tiny subtle animation. Just leaning out to the right here. I'm thinking what I really want is it to kind of, jostle up and down a bit. So I want it to move sort of as, maybe because the way the box is moving down when they pop up. So do I want them moving down or up? I think I do want them moving up because they should be springing outwards. So they should move up and then down a bit. So actually, let's get rid of these keyframes. They're only going to get in our way. Let's take this rotation back to 0 and nudge this across. So also, don't be afraid of, if you animate something and it doesn't look right, start again. It's fine. Even if you're a day into a project, it's better that you start over and find something that works than try to, push the keyframes that you have made to making them look just a little bit better, because, we can get invested in all the time we've spent on something, but if it's not working, scrap it. So let's start again. I'm going to separate this position values. Let's go to separate dimensions and just do the Y position. So I just want to focus on getting a nice bounce of this wine bottle coming out. So I'm going to keyframe its position at the start, then its position up, and then its position down, and then we've got our resting keyframe here. So now we've got a nice little bounce here. That is way too intense though. For us, let's go into our graph editor and see what's happening here. We just need to see the Y-axis. So let's push these down. I'll push these closer to the center. All right, that's looking much better. It is very subtle though. I want to move these ones further out. And of course, we don't have any easing on these, so let's press F9 to easy ease those, or you could click the Bezier tool, little icon down here, which is easy ease. So when we want this first ease to be, we want it to jump up pretty fast. So we want this anchor point, this Bezier point facing straight down. So it's going to be at its maximum speed at the start, bob up a little bit, and then bounce back down, and then go to its resting position. Oh, that's really subtle. Let's increase this a bit more so we can see what's happening, because this is all happening because it's parented to the box. It's stuck to the box as well. Yeah, this needs to happen a bit faster. it's a wine bottle. It shouldn't, it's a heavy object. It's not going to bounce around like a ball or a loaf of bread or something. It's going to make, it's not going to, it shouldn't really bounce much. Glass tends not to bounce.
Are you thinking about that in context of the other stuff that's in there, and you're thinking like the toilet paper might bounce a bit more?
Yeah, a little bit. It's not going to be, it's not going to matter too much, but it's going to be a little bit. And see, at the moment, it does do like, that bounce is too big here. So there would be a slight little bounce, like if you were, to drop, not drop a wine bottle, but if you were to drop a wine bottle a centimeter above the ground, it isn't just going to go, it's going to go, same if you drop a coin, even though it's a hard object, it will bounce a little bit. So let's see, maybe on these, so jump up a little bit more. Maybe I can move these keyframes over to the right. Let's zoom in a bit so we have more scope. And let's see what happens when if we bounce it up a whole lot. Okay, that's not too bad. We can push this first. Bounce a fair bit. Ooh, okay, let's drag that down. So now that's a little bit too much. So now we can see the wine bounces up and then kind of hangs in the air before it plops down. Now, that movement kind of works here, like they're these little characters announcing themselves. Like this bounce down of the wine feels natural, like he just, he settles, but like it's a hard tsh as he falls down. Maybe there's a bit too much hang time where he's up in the air. So I'll move that little last two keyframes over to the edge. That's not too bad. And now I'm thinking, does this need that rotation as they sort of spread out like a fan that we were maybe talking about earlier? It might work, but it might be better for them all just to pop up straight. Because as I was designing this, the initial intention was to have them all rotated and it to be a little more of a pleasing sort of aspect. But I think this sort of the geometric design, kind of like everything's so straight, and maybe because I don't do as geometric as design so often, that I kind of want to lean into that. Right. And I think having them like completely parallel, like, and with each other, like with the hands and everything. Like in the moment, the only diagonal lines are in his sort of collar and neck, and a few in the the position of the masks. So having like all vertical movement might be nice. So that's pretty good. That wine bounce is pretty good there. Maybe you can bounce a bit more at the end, but not for as long. Let's see how that looks. That's pretty good. So we get whoosh. I think that's not too bad for our wine bottle. Let me zoom out and assess it again, because there's things that I think are looking great, but then when I go and take a lunch break or come back the next day, I'm like, what was I thinking? That's not how that works. You get sort of caught up in what you're doing, and you don't see the full picture. So let's zoom out and see how this looks in context. Okay, now I'm seeing it probably pops up a bit too much. Now, there is one thing that might help with this, which I normally sometimes add at the end, sometimes not, is I'm going to lower the frame rate of this so that animates on 2. So I'm going to do that by adding an adjustment layer with a Control-Alt-Y and adding the effect posterize time. Now, people watch my tutorials know that this happens in almost every one. So I'm going to lower the frame rate to 12 frames per second. Let's adjust this. Let's call this posterizer. So because we always rename our layers, don't want the layer police coming after us because we've already done some sins in our Photoshop file. But now this is going to animate, instead of it being, I think it's on 24 frames per second. That's right. Now it's going to play back at 12, which, won't make a huge difference to the smoothness of the motion, but it will hopefully add just a little bit more, texture and, crackle. Some people say sparkle when they say animation on 2, so that's a bit of sparkle. So it's going to cut down on the amount of frames that we see, so things won't look as smooth. And I really like this look, and so we can see that helps the wine bottle animation a bit, but I think the movement compared to is a little too smooth and bouncy. So let's go and, so what I think I want to see here is, oh my God, that's really small. There we go. I want to see less curves and more sort of like sharper angles. So we can do that by stretching out these anchor points here. So they're a little bit squarer. So let's try this. So we're getting more time in sort of these sort of key positions. So we're favoring the keyframes a lot. So there's not a lot of time that we're transitioning. There's maybe a few frames between the transition, but we've got like a lot of frames of it at its highest and lowest points. And that's something we can maybe have less of with the softer items like the toilet paper, of this glass bottle. Yeah, and let's make this even more severe. Push this one here. That's not too bad. Now, I think now is probably a good time to move on and animate some of the other objects. And of course, we need to animate him. Oh, this wine bottle. I always personify my things as male. That's not necessarily true. They. This wine bottle, male or female or otherwise, needs to bounce off at the end here. So I'm just going to move this keyframe to the end here and see how this works. So the end, really what I want it to happen is as the hands move up the groceries and they're going to bring them back down, our groceries are going to stay in the air a little bit longer. So what's happening in these keyframes? We've got these going up. Yeah, okay. So we only need the first keyframes really because it's not going to be coming down. Let's just get rid of the last two and work on these two separately. Let's zoom in here. Okay. So we want, that actually looks pretty good. So we can see as the box lifts up, the wine kind of like hangs in the air as well. Like when the box comes down, because the wine isn't attached to it, it's not strapped in there, it still has the momentum of moving up and takes a little while to catch up. So that's pretty good. Let's see how far we can push that. I always think it's good to, test to see what would it look like if it went up a crazy amount, and then you can always turn it back.
Yeah, Steve was talking about that in chat about like the exaggeration in animation.
Yeah, like in animation, one of the principles is to have exaggerations because we're in a fantasy world here. We can do what we want, so we may as well take advantage of that. And sometimes that might advance the story a bit. Might serve the story a bit more. So, yeah. So even though like here our bottle jumps up even more than it does at the start here, because we can see this curve is lower than it is here. It brings there's a nice bit of movement at the end here. So I like that here. Maybe what if I was to pull this one down really far? So here we get it really bobbing out the groceries here. And I think, do we like that? I kind of like that it brings attention to the groceries a lot more. Like it definitely says, hey, we're here, come look at us. I don't think that's going to be an issue because they already, they're popping on the screen. They're going to draw attention anyway. But I'm not sure if it looks good or not. I think let's leave it like that for now. Let's make this a bit more severe. Let's move that curve really extreme. So that bounce at the bottom is, yeah, that's good. I like that. So he really just sort of like slams back down. Like feels very sturdy and confident, and I like that. Confidence in animation and design is, something I always like. When I see it, I really admire and try to put as much as I know that a lot of my work doesn't have quite that confidence. So I like to, when I see that, put that in there. All right, so let's keep that. Okay, now so what we can do now is we can have pretty similar movement in all of our other ones. Now let's see how that rotation is going to look. So I'm thinking that maybe it won't work to have these things rotated, but let's give it a go anyway. So let's keyframe our rotation at the start. So, and then this is its resting position. Have it to the side. Let's just see how this looks. Well, it's going to need to be a lot more severe. So let's go into our graph editor. And we're in the value graph here. Excuse me. Let's push this on up so we have a similar looking curve. That's it. Okay, that doesn't work at all. That's way too sharp. But that's not too bad.
It's pretty cool.
Like he's a leaning backwards.
It's like he's sort of sitting on the side of the cardboard box there, sort of.
Yeah, like I can, like if he had an arm, his arm would be, leaning over that side. Okay, that's not bad at all. Maybe like I still don't like these first few frames here aren't looking, they stick out to me as not being great. Like I think it'll look fine within the context of the animation, but let's try if we move this rotation up a bit. So he doesn't start vertical, he starts a bit more to the side. That's not okay. I quite like that. That's good. Okay, let's have some rotation there. And I think we might only need the rotation on the bread and the wine as well.
And I don't want to be the fun police or anything, but just to let you know that we've got about 20 minutes left.
20 minutes left. Well, I think we can get through the rest of these pretty quick, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get all of these objects. The bread, I'm going to move its anchor point to the middle of the bread rotation, and I'm just going to copy all of these keyframes. It's going to rotate the wrong direction, but let's paste them onto our bread, and we can see our bread already has the same motion. So let's change this rotation from plus 29. Oh, I don't like that let's go to minus 30. I don't like this. 29 degrees.
Night at the Roxbury a little bit there, where they were kind of both.
All right, yeah. Let's change these to 30 degrees. I always like to have rounded numbers in my in my timeline. All right, so let's see. And our bread is going from plus 13. It should be minus 13. So now they should be. Okay, now they're doing the thing. Let me check that graph editor. Okay, let's have that handle pointing down. Okay, so now we've got our bread moving. I will grab, and now because I've separated its Y and X dimensions, I need to push this to the left. So I can just grab and just nudge it to the left. And that won't affect any of its other positions at all. So there we are. So we've got our bread coming in. Now, like we said, we might want to make that bounce a little less harsh for the bread. And I don't want these to be all making an identical movement as well. So let's push this last keyframe back and make this a bit more softer. Still pretty firm. Let's maybe just soften that curve a little bit. There we go. I think that's a little bit better. Or maybe. Yeah. All right. Also, one thing we can do is I am just going to grab these keyframes and drag them to the right one. So then there's slight. So it's making its movement just slightly offset, because if everything was moving at the same time, it'd be, it'd all be maybe a bit too much. So now let's do the same with all our other objects. Milk. Put your anchor point in the middle of you. Our peach. Put that in the middle there. Now it is a peach, but it could be an orange. And I thought, well, it doesn't matter. If you think it's a peach or an orange, you're correct. I was like, because I drew a peach, and then that'll be great. And no, it doesn't come across so much. But I think what's important is it reads as fruit. And
that's true. We can't see if it's completely round or if it has a little peach butt or anything.
Yeah.
Because it's down there. So it's all up to the imagination until it pops up. It's like Schrodinger's peach.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve was saying maybe get the orange to do a total 360 flip.
We could, let's. I'm not even sure we have a bottom of this. Oh, we do. We've got it. Because I know,
orange, right? Because it doesn't. Oh, I suppose it could still have the butt on the other side.
No, it's the butt's there. It's let's if we're going to Illustrator, let's get rid of this mask layer. It's got a separation. That's the little butt. It's subtle.
I see. Yeah.
Because I'm living in such a geometrically confined style, that's how it sits. Thus the confusion with the orange. And I thought, well, let's leave it, and no one's going to notice unless I bring it up.
Nice.
So let's bring it up. Okay, now I've moved the anchor points all to the middle. So and I'm not going to worry about their rotation. So I'm just going to copy the position keyframes from the others and paste them on these objects. So now we've got all our objects doing a little bounce. Nice. Now I want to offset these as well. Toilet paper is going to hang the most, so I want that to come down last. So I'm going to move their keyframes over a little bit more. Oh, does fall quite heavy though. So let's just deal with the other ones. Let's just offset those all by 1. So at least they're next to each other. They're not bouncing too similarly. And then let's go and do our toilet paper. Maybe let's have the milk come down a little bit further. Okay, now toilet paper, let's spread out these keyframes. Let's go into our graph editor. Because we've got such a real pointy curve here, like this anchor point's going down, like when we spread these out, like it doesn't make it less severe because it's still pointing down so much. So we need to tilt it back a bit more. There we are. So we can see toilet paper lands much softer now and cushions nicely in. I like that a lot. There we are. Okay, I think that's pretty nicely balanced. Maybe we can go in and let's just pick a peach at random, go in and just adjust the curve slightly, just so there's just a tiny bit more difference between its motion and the milk. Because in the milk, they're looking pretty similar, aren't they? They're bouncing up at the same time. There we are. Now we can see they're all coming in slightly differently. Now I think to have the orange do a 360, it might be a bit too out of the scope of what's being animated here. Like just because it would have to fly up pretty far. But let's give it a go anyway, because I think we've got most of what we want animated on the scene done. So I'm going to duplicate that peach layer. Hide the other one. I'm just going to call this peach spin. And let's see how we can do that. Okay. So it's going to need to go way further up. It's going to go up here. And because it's going up, it's going to need to last longer in the air. So let's try this. It's not too bad. Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty good timing. And let's keyframe its rotation. Here, and we want, by the time it lands, to be, the right way up. So at the beginning, let's try it with 1 full rotation 360. I don't think that might be too fast.
Looks like he's jumping.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Like being double bounced on a trampoline. Yeah.
Let's take it down to, I don't mind the spin though. Let's take it to 90 degrees, much less. So we just get a bit of even though it's not making full rotation, we can kind of imagine it. And it doesn't really need to. It needs to. That's pretty good. I'm going to want to adjust the easing of those. So I'll ease those. Let's go into the graph editor and see if we can make this rotation. So I kind of want it to hang at the top here, so it's not rotating much. So maybe if I move the curves like this, I don't normally make an S curve in this way, but let's see how this works. That's not too bad. So I want it to be, yeah, that's good. I like this. Good work, Festus. This is exactly this is good feedback. And I thought, no, not going to work. It's going to be too much. I think it does. Okay, that's too severe, this curve. Let's pull that back. Let's knock this down to a third because I'm getting less than real-time playback. And I think we can just lower the position of that pitch a little bit. I don't think it needs to go that high. I think that might be breaking the physics a little bit too much. And how it snaps back into its place in rotation is maybe not quite what I want as well. That's little, these few frames here. Maybe if I move this rotation over here a little bit. Nope, that's worse. Okay, how am I going to do this? Let's add another rotation keyframe. Maybe its rotation we want to move something like this. Maybe. Why is that? Oh, that's not too bad. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think that's pretty good. Yeah, and I think also, yeah, and I think maybe it doesn't need to quite hang, like it can come down a bit sooner as well, because I still think it has enough time to read as, it becomes the focal point way before that. So, yeah, and I might just nudge that last rotation keyframes to line up as well. That's pretty good. And at the end here, all of these position keyframes are the same. So let's just adjust these a tiny bit. I'm just like randomly dragging them so at least there's some slight variation as they fall out as well. Oh, but that doesn't quite work, because they should all be going up at the same time. They should all be going up different amounts. So
just giving you a 10-minute warning.
Is that till stream cutoff or until question time?
Till stream cutoff, pretty much. Yeah.
All right.
That takes us to 25.
Then why don't I think we have?
If we want to get kimchi, we've got 5 minutes to grab kimchi.
Yeah. Well, I think we're pretty much done for this animation. There might be a few tweaks at this, at the end here with these bounces going down to like offset them slightly. And then I would maybe I've got a static texture in here, so I'm going to just drag in a video texture. Let's stretch that to fit the canvas. Hide that, set the texture to screen mode. I'm going to add a curved effect. I'm going to use FX Console now because I've revealed my secrets.
Nice demo.
And adjust that a bit.
Using the plugin.
Yeah, so now we've got just a bit of texture speckling around here. Nice. And I think we're done.
Amazing.
So yeah, hit me with some questions and let me know. Here's kimchi.
Oh, kimchi.
Thank you, honey. Okay. So all right, everyone.
Let's get kimchi cam. I don't have lower thirds for kimchi.
Oh no, and he's in his little Chinese emperor's costume as well. That's very cute. All right, and we've got
kimchi cam. Amazing. Is kimchi one of your 5 favorite mammals? Because we didn't talk about that either yet.
Oh yes, we do. Yes. Well, mine specifically, and we also have some more accessories that my wife has passed me.
We've got the kimchi. Amazing.
The kimchi specs on.
Very tolerant having those glasses on. Wow.
Oh no. Yes, keep the mouse over. Mouse down. Sorry, buddy. You're all right. He's
kimchi
good.
live. How old is Kimchi?
Kimchi is he's 2.
So
he's
young.
2 and a bit. So yeah, he's a young boy. Fella. We're fully grown.
Yeah.
Heavy, almost 3 kilos.
Wow. Big. Amazing. Well, we do have a little bit of time for questions then, which is great. We usually run out of so much time. That was obviously amazing. We'll have another look at it in just a moment. But there was a question around. This is a pretty hard one, but around what do you take into consideration when quoting? I'll kind of qualify it down into a shorter version. So what do you take into consideration when kind of quoting, maybe with a new client or something like that?
Okay. Well, normally, normally a client will expect you to, what you should do is say, hey, what's your budget, and figure out what you can do for that budget. Because like an animation can, it might take, an hour and a half like this one is, or an animation can take a week for this long.
Yeah.
And it depends on the style of what they want, what's important to them. But normally the deciding factor is going to be budget. So normally if someone says, hey, can you say, I get asked to do YouTube intros so many times. So
right.
Mainly because I did a video about making YouTube intro. So, this is my own fault, but and not a problem to have, more people asking for work. Like YouTube intros, that's something that, like music videos, it's like a lot of people want to do them and a lot of people don't have much money for them. So, like if it was something like that, or even any project, I would say, hey, the pricing completely depends on the style and the complexity, because that determines how long it's going to take. So let's say a 30-second explainer video could be anywhere between $6,000 to $20,000. I'd need a few more information, and if you could let me know your budget range, I can tell you what I can offer for that.
Yeah.
And if you have any style references, and you normally want to extract that information as soon as possible. Normally the clients are always hesitant to tell you their budget, because they think
my
you're just
follow-up question. What happens when they say, well, we've got, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Try and
So I
trail
think,
off.
because they just assume you're going to say, they don't want to get ripped off. And I understand that. I'm the same way when, if someone, like if I went to buy milk and someone says, how much is the milk? And they said, how much you got? I'm like, no, just tell me how much the milk is. Like, and then I'll decide if I want it or not.
Right.
Because an animation is like, well, how much you got to spend? I can, if you've got 10 grand, I can make you an awesome 10 grand animation. If you got 100 grand, I can make you an awesome 100 grand animation.
Right.
But I think as soon as you're going to have to say the dollar amount first. So you should say a broad range first, and that gets them talking. Normally, that's like the next email back is like, oh wow, I didn't realize I only have $2,000, and right. That's fine. It doesn't, that they have that budget. And then normally, like, you shouldn't try to sell yourself short. Like, tell them how much is it worth. And normally the response will be, because we fear we'll get the response, that's so expensive. How dare you charge me that much? But the reality is, people will realize, oh wow, I didn't realize this was that expensive. You sound like professional. I only have this much money.
Right.
Can we do something for that? And then you can come back and say, hey, well, for that much money, we can do something like this. It'll be, a limited version with maybe a limited style and design. But you could have, for $1,000, for a low budget, you can get a great looking animation, but it would just have to be very simple. It won't have characters and cell animation. It'll probably be, text based and, have some shapes and things like that. And figuring out what's important to the client and what they want. Because normally also I get sent like, hey, we want an animation like this. And they'll say, like, we have $3,000. Here's we want it to look like this for 10 seconds. And they'll send me like, an example would be like the Oddfellows animation at the beginning of the stream. Like it's normally something from Oddfellows, Giant Ant, or Buck, like the best animation studios. And they'll come to me with a $5,000 budget. And like, I think like, and I'll look at the credits and there's 10 animators and 10 designers on this. I'm like, well, I know, and they probably work for at least a month on this. Like, so that's probably costing 200 to 400 grand.
Right.
Like, realistically, for something at that level. And like, so, at that point, you just, you have to set expectations like, hey, I can offer this,
Yeah.
this, like what I've done in my reel is what I can offer. And maybe having an example of like, hey, I made this animation for $5,000. This video, that's kind of, and then they can place the budget and cost of things in their head a little bit more.
Do you think in particular motion, because it does take a lot of time, a lot of particular expertise, like its specialist area? Do you think that a lot of clients understand that, or do you find I hesitate to use the word educating clients because I think it belittles clients too much. But do you for lack of a better word, do you find that you do need to take people through that process and kind of explain what it's going to take X amount of time and X amount of budget to get that kind of quality? Is that something you're finding yourself doing a lot?
I think so. I think maybe even less so than illustration. I think because people, they understand, okay, this stuff has to move, and I don't know how to do it. Like everyone can, like, I think with like photographers and illustrators, people can think like, well, I can take a photo. Come on, like, why are you charging so much?
I got an iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, look, like my cousin, she's got some pencils. Why are we paying so much this much for illustration? But with animation, they're like, well, I don't really know how to do this, so there's a bit more of a barrier there. But I think you do have to, like, people don't understand how long it can take. There's like, oh, we need an animation, we need it in a week. I'm like, well, we need to storyboard and have that approved, and then design everything, then animate it, and then, you know, if you want sound design, that has to happen. Like, it's a much bigger process, and, you know, the timelines are always tight. There's not been a project on when the deadline hasn't been tight, because everyone doesn't, you know, no one gives, you know, always assumes it takes a lot less. So there is a point of, an educating that happens. And to me, that's my least favorite part of the thing. So when I'm, you know, as I've done less freelancing, those were the first clients that I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do work with client, not necessarily new clients, but clients that are new to working in animation, unless the project was, you know, really, really great, because a lot of that, you know, that takes a lot of time. And, you know, it's awesome working with, you know, a studio when you just go in, they know, like, hey, we know your day rate, come in, here's the money, we want you to do this, and here's how, you know, they know the process and know how it goes. There's no sort of trying to dance around like, ooh, this budget costs this, you know, this costs that, you know, and try to figure out that way. And also a great tip, if you get feedback from your client that isn't, you know, it's going to take a long time, you tell them, hey, that's great, but that's going to take an extra day. That's going to cost an extra $600 or something like that. And they're going to quickly realize maybe it wasn't that big of a deal, that, you know, they don't like purple hats. It needs to be something else.
Right. Maybe it's okay as is.
And if you can't, you know, if you're not comfortable charging them more, because maybe a fixed rate or something, you can say, hey, that's actually going to take a day, and that time is going to be better spent animating this section. I think it's more important to tell this story. We can do that, but, you know, we can't just do more. It's going to have to take something from somewhere else or add more time or money.
Oh, that's awesome. We're sort of getting towards the end. Just before we'll take another quick final look at the animation, but just to let you all know what else we're up to, we're back tomorrow. So today was with Animating with Ben Marriott for the Honor Heroes campaign. Check that out. Have a go yourself. We'd love to, if you do, please share it with us. We'd love to see what you come up with. Tomorrow morning, we have Vector Illustration with Dale Bagini. Then we have Demis Rusley on here, and then we have Honor Heroes, and Jeremy Lord is taking a crack at that project as well. So this has been amazing. I always have such a great time with you. Oh, let's look at that final animation. Look at that.
Thank you, Flynn. And no, it's always great to come on here. I always have so much fun, especially answering the questions and talking to everyone in the chat. It's great.
Yeah, thank you so much, chat. Everyone's been fantastic. Will this go up online? Oh, let's have a final look at Kimchi. I just saw that. Oh, I saw that off camera.
Let's have a final look at Kimchi.
Thanks, Kimchi. Thanks for joining. Will this end up online, like on your Instagram or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm probably going to, I might spend a little bit of time tweaking it. And yeah, but it's going to go up eventually. I'm not sure how soon. I did think I might, you know, turn it into a YouTube video talking about hierarchy or focus or something. So it might get, you know, co-opted into some more content. But you saw the creation here first.
We'll keep an eye out for that. We might get cut off in a moment, but thank you so much, Ben. Thank you, everyone in chat, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much. See you, everyone.